question is that this bill be now read a second time, and I call the member for Paterson.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. The Albanese government is not just providing for the Australia of today, but it's also securing the Australia of the future. And this digital ID bill will deliver a legislative framework for a secure, centralised network of digital identification that's not only going to be more convenient for everyday use, but it's going to protect millions of Australians from data breaches that leave them vulnerable. This legislation is significant reform that supports individuals, businesses, governments and creates opportunities for economic growth. It's an approach for identification which encourages security, contrary to what we're hearing from those opposite, who would really just like us to live in a romantic, rose-coloured, revisionist rear mirror view of the world where nothing sort of ever has to change and it's all going to be okay. And the member for New England said that he was concerned about, having cameras in the bathroom and the bedroom. Well, I can assure the member for New England that is something that we do not want, especially not from him or anyone else for that matter. This legislation is important because individuals are going to be able to prove who they are once with their physical documentation, and then a digital representation will be able to be used. Businesses will be able to verify their customers with greater ease. This bill will deliver for Australians, providing privacy, security, and it will strengthen policies and frameworks already established and accepted within the Australian public. And I really would like to start with some myth-busting after listening to the member for New England. In my electorate of Paterson, where 20% of the population is aged over 65, there are some concerns that physical IDs may become invalid. And there is some fear-mongering going on and quite frankly, some peddling of absolute nonsense. People are being told that physical IDs won't, be in existence anymore and everyone will be forced to go digital. It's just simply not true. Digital ID is completely voluntary. It is completely voluntary. The Albanese Labor government is committed to giving Australians a choice, and this is no different. The digital ID will also be completely free to all individuals. There'll be no costs and no hidden fees. There are some also who are suggesting that the digital ID exposes our personal information or destroys our sense of privacy. Again, the opposite is true. Digital ID enhances our privacy. Let's give an example. Say a group of friends go out to celebrate an 18th birthday. We've all got young people in our lives and we know they're all very keen to get to the pub for a drink when they turn 18. They go to the pub and they buy a round of beer and they hand over their physical ID. And now the bartender knows that they are of age, which is a good thing, but they also have shown their full home address and their organ donor status. This information is completely irrelevant when you're buying a round of beers for your mate's 18th. With digital ID, we'll be able to limit what sort of information someone can see in that scenario without oversharing information. And I think that's particularly important for young people, particularly when they're going out to pubs and clubs and may not want to divulge their address to someone who they have to show for security. Now, what about that 100-point ID verification system? We've all been there and done that before, digging out passports and water bills and the like to make it to 100 points. Is the digital ID another layer of bureaucracy and government overreach? That's what we're being told by those opposite. Of course not. The digital ID system allows for people to undergo verification one time and then use it over and over again across government and business services without the services needing to store or file extra copies of your documents. So I think that's a good thing. I don't want to have to dig out my birth certificate or my passport and give copies to numerous organisations. You'll be able to verify yourself once using your documentation, and then once your digital identity is established, That's what you'll use. It is going to be so much more secure, so much more convenient for people rather than having to be fetching around for all of these documents every time you want to go for a home loan or do these things. So, some of these myths really have just got no place. And another myth is some are saying that the digital ID is risky because no one has done it before. And yet, there are innovative systems in countries across the world, including some strong democratic nations like Singapore, Denmark and the Netherlands, who use systems like ours. In Denmark in particular, over 90% of the population use digital ID. Now, when I last looked, those good folk in Denmark, they're pretty switched on, especially with stuff like this. So I don't think 90% of their population would be voluntarily using it if they didn't think it was up to speed. In fact, private companies like MasterCard are already offering digital ID services to individuals and businesses. And some are saying that the digital ID system will go unregulated. That's another myth, allowing personal data to be sold off and exploited. This is just completely false. Our legislation will introduce an appointed regulatory body, independent of government, that will approve and accredit services and then ensure the services comply with the legislation and keep people's information safe. The Australian Digital ID Regulator is vital for fair, transparent and a compliant system. And this bill is not being rushed, and it is not being moved without thoughtful consideration on how we implement it. We are putting in the hard yards now, and we are getting this right. I'm proud to be part of a government that is delivering for every Australian, whether you're a student, a senior, a small business owner and everyone in between. The digital ID is a decision for you to streamline how you use your ID and how you choose to be part of a digital future. And we want to equip Australians to be part of a digital future. This is coming. There is no point hiding under the bed covers like the member for New England projected onto all of us, saying, oh, no, we don't want any of this, we don't want them coming for you. What nonsense. No one's coming for anyone. People are voluntarily being able to give their own information, set up a digital ID and walk confidently into a digital world that they need to be armed and identified for, and quite frankly they want to be. They want to embrace the technology. If it was up to the member for New England, we'd all still be walking around with handheld lines and there'd be no mobile phones. I mean, honestly, the troglodytes live under the bridges. Today I want to talk to you about the Powers Act as well. It is very important that this bill be passed. It's something that we have to have. We just have to have the laws to go with the new technologies in our world. And look, here's another example. Imagine you're applying for a government service and you need to prove that you're you. Well, that's where the digital ID will come in handy. They're like virtual versions of your driver's licence or passport that you can use online. And so much of our lives is happening on the internet. We need to make sure these digital IDs are super secure, and that's where the Powers Act comes into play. The Powers Act is about making sure digital IDs are safe, easy to use and trustworthy. And it does a few key things. There will be an accreditation scheme. This is like a stamp of approval for companies that provide digital ID services. The Powers Act makes it mandatory for these companies to meet strict standards to protect your privacy and security. Expanding digital ID use. The Act wants to make digital IDs more widespread, so you can use them not just for government transactions, but also for other online activities like shopping or banking. Privacy protections are so important. Your privacy really matters, and it matters ever so more online. The Powers Act adds extra layers of protection to make sure your personal information stays safe when using digital ID. Regulation and oversight is another important thing. There are watchdogs in place like the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission to make sure people follow the rules and keep digital IDs reliable. And look, why does any of this really matter? Well, it is really a big deal. We are living ever more in a digital world, and we must have laws that keep up with the way the world and technology is changing. Digital IDs will make life easier. There'll be no more digging out your physical documents, no more raking around in the back of the wardrobe for your birth certificate and trying to sticky tape it together. You'll be able to prove who you are online. There'll be more security measures in place. You'll feel safer knowing your personal info is better protected from hackers and scammers. And believe it or not, there will be a boost to the economy from making digital ID a thing. It'll make online transactions smoother, more efficient and more secure. Your data is valuable. The Powers Act aims to ensure your privacy is respected, giving you more control over how your information is used. So what happens now? Well, the Powers Act is just the beginning. It sets the groundwork for a safer and more reliable digital world, but there is still more work to be done to put everything into action. As technology evolves and our online lives continue to grow, it's crucial to have laws like the Powers Act in place to keep up with the changes and protect us all. And that's what this government is doing. If we weren't passing legislation like this, we would be absolutely remiss. We would be just not up to our duty of governing. We have to have laws that protect people in an ever-changing world. And remember, your digital identity is just as important as your real-life identity. So we need to keep an eye on, how the world is changing, and we need to have laws that fit those changes. And you might really be wondering, what all this digital ID stuff is about. And I have heard people say that, they say, Meryl, what's all this ID stuff? It is just really important that people have an understanding that it is about digital identity. It is like a virtual passport or a virtual driver's licence for the internet. And that is so important. It will mean safer online transactions. And when you're shopping online or accessing government services, the digital ID will be more secure, protecting your personal information from cyber threats. Imagine not having to stand in long lines or fill out tons of paperwork every time you need to access a government service. Wouldn't that be refreshing? Well, that's the beauty of digital IDs. They will make it easier to prove who you are online, also in person, saving you time and a lot of hassle, quite frankly. Your privacy does matter. The Digital ID Bill includes measures to ensure that your personal information is protected online, so you can feel more confident knowing that your data is in safe hands, and it will boost the economy by streamlining online transactions and making it easier for businesses to verify your identity. So, whether you're a student applying for government assistance, a small business owner filling in their taxes online, the Digital ID Bill is there to make your online experience safer, smoother and more convenient. And one of the things that is ever present in my mind about this piece of legislation is that constantly we hear we need to cut red tape, we need to make things easier for people, for businesses, things should be more streamlined. I've spent most of my adult life hearing that, cut red tape, cut red tape. And we're actually doing this with this bill. This is a form of red tape cutting, yet I'm hearing often from proponents opposite, who I've heard the most in the years, proclaiming that red tape should be cut, that somehow now, this is not a good thing. This is not where we should be taking the Australian people. This is not how we should be setting up the Australian economy. The thing that would be absolutely remiss of us is to not set up the Australian economy and protect Australian people. There is a very lively, vibrant digital world out there. If we do not have the laws enveloping our country to make it better, to put it on the right footing for this ever-changing world, then we are not the right government for the time. And that is the thing. This is not about shrinking away from the world that is ever-changing. This is about equipping ourselves well, providing ourselves with the tools that we need to be bold and confident and productive in an ever-changing world. And this government is providing that for Australians. It will make life simpler. And I know for those opposite, change is scary, technology is a thing of bewilderment. Well, we are embracing it. We are taking the Australian people forward with us, and we are saying we want to be, on the front foot and doing this for a vibrant, secure and technologically savvy Australia.